Yeah, if we run over a little bit, I'll probably bail out right at 2 because I'm in the middle.
No problem. If you have to go at any point, that's totally fine.
Yeah, all right.
But that's fine. And mum's the word. Mum's the word.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So before we start, Mike, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You were talking about this. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I realize that everybody likes different types of music, and I can agree that even somebody who I don't like is deserved of an entry in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And they announced the inductees today, and I mean, Ringo Starr, obviously, Lou Reed, who I'm not a particular fan of, but he's very historically, a big figure. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, not exactly my cup of tea, but again, Bill Withers, a few others. The one I had a real problem with was Green Day. They're just not my cup of tea, but
Right.
I know a lot of other people. But the thing is, I looked it up. I look at the list of people that are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and you see that Joan Jett and the Blackhearts and Green Day have made it ahead of the Cars, Chicago, Deep Purple, Dire Straits, ELO, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Jethro Tull, Yes, King Crimson, Eurythmics. I mean, I can go on and on. Bands that I think are much more deserving than, and not to say that eventually Green Day shouldn't get in or Joan Jett and the Blackhearts shouldn't get in, but I mean, my God, what are the people at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame smoking? I think they're just nuts.
Well, that's a good one. I mean, it's so hard to say. Like, you can't sit back and Deep Purple never won the Stanley Cup. It's hard for us to figure out how we exactly say somebody doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame, right?
Right. It's almost.
I mean,
and I mean,
I kind of think of historically. I think of bands historically. The bigger they are in history, more like more than wins and losses, right? Because they don't them or statistics. Historically, the Deep Purple is and yes, those are big bands, obviously.
yeah, I mean, it's like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has something against technical musicianship because all these bands, King Crimson, yes, it's the prog rock thing, and I think there's definitely something against progressive rock because it was musically complex compared to just 3 chords and.
Yes, that's for sure.
I'm sorry, it's like I think musical complexity is a good thing.
It's so hard to judge this, right? I mean, this is so difficult because.
Right. I mean, if Richie Blackmore is a jerk, fine. But I mean, I'm sure there are already plenty of jerks that are already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You can tell by some of their speeches. But
No, for sure.
I just,
Ringo Starr wasn't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before this. I mean, things like that also kind of really are bizarre to me. So.
Yeah. So I mean, that's my little rant. I just
People shouldn't go in as bands and people individually. Why? It's not like the Red Wings are in the Hall of Fame and Gordie Howe went in separately, or it's like just go in as people.
Well, yeah. I mean, okay. And then there's another argument. The Beatles are in as the Beatles, but
right.
now with Ringo Starr being in, Ringo, George, John Lennon, and Paul McCartney are all in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame separately as separate entities.
Right.
Eric Clapton is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as Eric Clapton, as a member of the Yardbirds, and as a member of Cream. It's like, okay, when do you not honor somebody?
Yeah.
After honoring somebody 3 other times, it's like I think that somebody like Yes deserves to get in before Eric Clapton gets a chance to be honored for the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th time.
I'm with you. And we'll have to talk about this more on the Russ, Mike, and Prog Rock podcast that we do.
Yeah, we can have special guest Eric Duhatschek.
Right, exactly.
I think Russ, based on his Facebook posting, will disagree with Mike on a couple of issues. So.
Oh, he likes Green Day and I said, and he likes Joan Jett, and like I said.
But before we go any further, and then translation right to hockey, because there was actually, have you guys seen the documentary on? I don't know what channel it's on. I want to say the History Channel about the '80s that was recently played. It's like a 12-part series about the '80s. It's just phenomenal. Yeah. I mean, and part of it, they actually do get into Miracle on Ice, so there's a hockey connection too. But there's a whole section about the music of the '80s, and it's amazing, and it just goes through like the first cell phones and what that meant, where yuppies came from, where Valley Girls came from. You know, the arcade generation, which I love. You know, the whole. I mean, I'm an '80s kid, and definitely an '80s kid. You know, through and through. So, yeah, I mean, and Joan Jett was a big '80s, and then MTV and how that happened, and then there's an amazing segment on the Run DMC Aerosmith, you know, connection when that came together and what that meant historically for music and general, and you know, how that brought. And because they actually filmed the sessions of them getting them together for the first time, which is really funny, like to see, like, because you got the Aerosmith guys and they got the bandanas wrapped around the tie wrapped around his head, you know, and he's sitting there, and the rappers play in the beginning with the drum beat and just playing that, and you know, he's Steve Tyler's like, so when does it get to my part? It's like, it never does. That's the cool part of it. What? It never gets to my part? And they're like talking back and forth, and really funny, and oh my gosh, just it's definitely, you got to check it out. It's called the 80s, and it's really good. I mean, I just set your, they play it a lot. Just set your timer to DVR to tape it. It's awesome.
I'll see if I can find out what channel it's on.
Yeah, if you're a kid of the 80s. So let's get into this show.
Hold on, before we start.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh.
Yes.
I can't find the TMZ story about the kids having mumps. I only found the one where they said he was exposed.
It's the one I sent you. It actually what it says is they're keeping the kids under quarantine because Bo Bennett has the mumps.
But they don't know.
No, that was yesterday's story. I thought you said the kids had the mumps.
Oh, no, I apologize if I...
No. Yeah, no, that was yesterday's story. Yeah, they're quarantined because they were exposed. I thought you said kids had the mumps.
Oh, no. No, I apologize.
That documentary series is on the National Geographic channel. It's called
National Geo, which is awesome. Which, by the way, maybe the best channel. Like, one of the best channels. National Geo is a really awesome channel. Brain Games is another thing you got to watch on National Geographic. So I apologize for my Coca-Cola-ish glasses today. I have been running around like an idiot with my son. Well, not an idiot. Like, I've been running around like an idiot in general. I've been running around with my son, who is actually doing much better. Had a bone scan yesterday. I just wanted to let you guys know he came back negative. So the bone tumor that he had was only in one spot. It's not cancer. So they're going towards an infection. All this is incredible news compared to where we were 2 weeks ago. So yeah, I appreciate all the well wishes. It's been amazing. And my lens crafters refuses to give me new contact lenses until I get an appointment, which I have not been able to actually go to do. So and they won't even give me a couple pairs of contact lenses. So now I'm down to just wearing my glasses. So anyway, I apologize. We will hopefully have that fixed. I look horrendous. I realize how bad I look in glasses now when I actually watch myself on this.
You now fit in with all of us.
I do. Except for the hair. I gotta lose the hair. Anyway.
Yeah, you get rid of the hair. Yeah, sure.
All right, here we go.
Yeah,
all right, so we'll start. We'll just go Mike, Kevin, and you maybe text Ryan too, Mike.
I just did. I sent him a message.
Okay, cool. Because Ryan Gardner's going to join us today to talk a little bit about Edmonton. Here we go. Today's date is Tuesday, December 16th.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
cool.
Mundo.
Here we go. Smile. Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, December 16th, 2014.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
I'm Josh Rimmer.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast and listening to, perhaps, the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast where we get together Monday through Friday at around 1 o'clock Eastern Time and talk about the news and various diseases. We're going to be joined today by Ryan Gardner, who just is jumping in as well. Ryan, we are live already.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Good. Thanks for jumping in. As you can see by looking at all of us, none of us have the mumps.
We might have another case, though,
right
here that just popped up.
Oh, another case of the mumps. But, Kevin, you have been following this mumps. You've been on mumps patrol, I think, 24/7 for the last week.
Yeah, no, I just before I got on the air, I was talking with the CDC again. I think yesterday's story of Bo Bennett, now being having mump symptoms and visiting the hospital. To me, it's just kind of a sad story for Bo Bennett, who didn't have any symptoms and really didn't know that he was exposing his virus to the hospital community. So hopefully none of the kids got it, because the spread of that is through you know, what comes out of your mouth, you know, if you're spitting or, you know, mucus and so forth. So, you know, hopefully that, you know, none of that occurred. But, you know, I think all of this is, even though the CDC really can't predict how an outbreak is going to unfold, I don't think any of this is out of the norm for mumps. You know, I think one of the misconceptions is that, you know, this is a particularly, that perhaps it's mutated, or that this is a strong thing. I've seen that suggested, but, you know, according to CDC, you know, the issue is much more simpler than that. The vaccine effectiveness is about 88%.
Okay.
So, you know, the quote that I used earlier in one of my stories from Dr. Greg Wallace, who's certainly an expert in this, said, you know, even in a well-vaccinated group of 100 people who are exposed to mumps, 10, 12, or 15 of them probably will get mumps.
Right.
Even in a well-vaccinated group, just because that's the failure rate. But, you know, what's lost in all that is most people won't get it if they've been vaccinated. And, you know, from the NHL's perspective, you know, they're doing what they can. It's not like they're not doing something that would prevent this. You know, you basically take the same precautions you do for the flu, but people still get the flu, which can be just as serious as the mumps. So, you know, I don't think this is a long-winded way of saying is you know, I don't think this is being caused by something that the league or teams aren't doing. I think they're doing what they can, but it's just one of those things. As the CDC official has said to me, you can't predict where it's going to happen. They've seen it in lacrosse teams. They've seen it in dormitories. They saw it in a rugby tournament once. And, you know, whenever you've got a situation where people are congregated in close proximity to one another, you know, you have the possibility of an outbreak. And they don't know why it occurs and why it doesn't. In some years, in the last decade, they've had as few as 256 cases in the United States. But in some years, they've had 3,000, and in another year, they had 6,000 cases.
Wow, okay.
So, yeah. So, you know, it's not, even though it's uncommon, it's not unprecedented to have an outbreak like we've had in the NHL, and it doesn't reflect anything that the league is doing or not doing. It's just the once it got in there, and you don't even know, it may not have even started with a hockey player. It could have been introduced by someone into the hockey community, and now they've spread along. The one thing that is interesting, though, and the Dr. Wallace told me again today, was, you know, it's pretty clear, even though in the normal way to transmit this wouldn't be in a competitive game situation, it seems pretty clear that it is being spread through competition. You know, so in other words, teams are playing each other. And, you know, what I suggested to the doctor is any of us who's ever watched the hockey game when they slow it down and it shows guys going in the corner, what do you notice? All the stuff that comes out of their mouth.
Oh, yeah.
When they hit together. So, I mean, it's pretty easy to see why that could happen. But, you know, you just hope that nobody gets seriously ill. And, you know, Francois Beauchemin said it was pretty tough on him. 5 days of high fevers, loss of 10 pounds. But some of the guys like Crosby have had no symptoms. So I think we're just going to have to ride it out. And here's the other thing, too. We won't know it's like 60 days after the last case before the CDC would say the outbreak is over. So, you know, this could take a while.
Well, let me just say, I found it fairly laughable. And, you know, this isn't a laughable scenario because people can get ill. There can be other things that happen because of the mumps, but I found it pretty hilarious that Sidney Crosby comes out in a press conference that when he was sitting in the locker room, I don't even remember what day it was, with a jaw so swollen that it looked like he had been hit by a left from Vladimir Klitschko, and I don't have the mumps.
Yeah, it was a little bit
really?
Here's the thing about that, though, Michael. I talked to them. That is not the way mumps presents. Mumps presents as swollen on both sides of the face, not one. So the Penguins thought, even though they tested him for mumps and it was negative, they thought it was the fact he had injured by coincidence his salivary glands just the game before in the game against Carolina. And because it wasn't on both sides of his face, which is what happened. I mean, compare the two pictures between Larson and Crosby. It was totally odd
Right.
that Crosby would have mumps only on one side of his face. So,
Right. Well, Crosby does everything better. You know.
but even though it didn't present like mumps specifically,
Right.
the Penguins doctors did test him for mumps, and it was negative.
Yeah.
I think this is a solution, a potential solution for the Edmonton Oilers losing problems, because what they have to do is make sure that their opponents are all wearing hazmat suits, because then they have a chance to win.
And we actually have another case being monitored. It's not confirmed that he has it, but in Chicago, we should keep an eye on what's going on with Duncan Keith. And they're already asking Joel Quenneville about it, because Quenneville announcing that he's going to miss tonight's game due to an illness, and that prompted a lot of the media contingent to ask questions regarding whether he has the mumps. And Quenneville's response right now, not sure about that. I don't know what's wrong. He's sick.
Can we just say that the mumps is getting better at drafting players? Like, as time goes on here?
Yeah.
The Fantasy Mumps League.
Well, so far, it's gotten Ryan Suter and
Right.
Crosby, and now if it's got Duncan Keith, it does sound like it's taking it up a notch.
Right. It's been Corey Perry, right?
An all-star ballot, seriously.
Right.
And the Blackhawks are actually
it's not
playing
just
the
like
Wild.
Zach Ronaldo getting the mumps or whatever. It's like Sidney Crosby getting the mumps, and it's completely. I mean, one thing you'll never see guys who don't go into the corners apparently get the mumps. That's another thing. You'll never get the mumps. Joe Thornton would never get the mumps.
And I have a question for Kevin. Now, Kevin, at the beginning of the year with the St. Louis Blues problems that they were having, is this what they had? Is this what the players had at the beginning of the year, or is this a total different bacteria infection that they had?
Well, I think everybody thinks they had the mumps, but it's not been confirmed. The Blues have not confirmed nor denied what they had. And, the other issue about Duncan Keith is you do have to factor in the fact that there have been players who have been sick who did not have the mumps.
Right.
There's flu going around, and they're just, other illnesses. I mean, we go through this, I've covered the league a long time, and every year we go through a period where teams get decimated by, flu-like symptoms. Some kind of virus that's, going around. And influenza every year, kind of takes its toll. So.
Well, I think that the Leafs should cancel the game tonight against Anaheim, because the Ducks have been ravaged by the mumps, and the Leafs don't want to end their long winning streak right now, so they need to avoid any kind of illness.
How do you feel? How do you feel, Kevin, about the locker rooms? I mean, I was thinking about this the other day because I haven't been to a game for a while because I had my back injury and then I had my son's issue. So I haven't been, and I was the other night. I'm thinking I was going to go tonight. I'm not going tonight. I'm actually going Thursday night. But I was thinking about this, like with my son, until I knew what was going on with him. I was a little bit afraid of actually going into these locker rooms.
Yeah, no, I share your concerns. When I was done with my conversation with the CDC, I asked about my own personal situation, and it's one of the few times when it's advantageous to be old, because I'm old enough to where they assume that anyone who was born when I was born has had the mumps in one way, shape, or form.
Really?
Back then.
You're not that old.
Well, no, they I was born, prior to 1957, and
okay, all right.
Anything before that, they just assumed, I've gone a long time without getting mumps. So either I've gotten it, or somewhere along the line it was a mild case.
Well, yeah. I was gonna ask if I'm gonna be going in NHL locker rooms, should I get a booster? Because I mean.
Yeah, I mean it can't hurt you. I mean, unless you ended up with one of the rare, one of a bazillion.
I mean, we really have to worry about Ty, right? I mean, Ty's the one we really.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
Did you guys see Aaron Portzline's tweets yesterday about the locker rooms? And by the way, Aaron Portzline, a great writer with the Columbus Dispatch, he had some great quotes yesterday from John Davidson, and obviously Pittsburgh was in there a couple nights ago, and a little bit of a mumps update. Aaron said yesterday, the Blue Jackets bombed the visitors' dressing room after the Pens checked out of the Nationwide Arena late Saturday. John Davidson said, we got rid of every water bottle, thoroughly cleaned everything. We're taking every precaution so far. No Columbus Blue Jackets mumps victims as of yet. and the Jackets have even offered mumps shots to the players and staff, and they have been doing that as far back as November.
Gee, I know Columbus doesn't like the Penguins, but that's going a bit too far.
I don't think so.
Actually, in fairness, most of the teams have given their shots. Like, it's not like, that's not added precaution. That's been pretty normal since November. The league sent out in November sort of guidelines and explaining what was going on, and sent out guidelines and all. Not all teams, but most teams started giving inoculations because there's a lot of European players who they don't have the same protocol in their countries for vaccines that we have. So and most of the players have, as far as I can tell. Now, teams have been very careful because this is obviously private medical information, so nobody is providing any lists of how many people were vaccinated, but for the most part, the impression I have is that most players are getting the vaccinations. But some of the players who have, as we all know, with Sidney Crosby being the famous one, who have been well vaccinated, have gotten the disease because it is only 88% effective. Which
when you get the vaccination doesn't take on like immediately. Like you're not,
Right.
So if you've been around these guys, you're getting the vaccination. It's not going to necessarily help anything.
One of the things that I read, and I did ask the CDC about it as well, and they said that I don't know that they can prove that, but they think that the booster, although most people agree that it doesn't really significantly enhance your immunity, what it does seem to do, at least from anecdotal evidence, is make the symptoms less severe. So, which would explain why a guy like Crosby, while he got the mumps, presented weirdly in terms of how it appeared on his face, and also, more importantly, and unless he comes in and says he got sicker than a dog over the last 36 hours, it really has not had any real symptoms other than he felt a little crummy, but
and most of the players who went to the Olympics last year, I remember hearing yesterday that Crosby was one of the players who did get inoculated for a number of things before going over to Sochi, and I can only assume that Perry and Keith and maybe even Ryan Suter from the U.S. would have done the same thing. So if that's the case, then this outbreak and these players getting, if Keith does have it, it either means it's some sort of new strain, or like you said, Kevin, it limited the symptoms of it, but it's still getting through and still affecting them.
Kevin, have you ever thought about doing a book about the kind of things you end up covering that you never would expect to end up covering in hockey? Like, this is like you spent all this time talking to the CDC.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no. But I would be careful to just kind of throw around that idea of a new strain. Like the CDC told me again this morning that mumps has been very predictable. And by that, in terms of what happens, and that the vaccine is is pretty much 88% effective and all that. It's less so than, say, the flu, which does mutate, and flu, as it was explained to me, is much more complicated to deal with because it does change from season to season.
And there's many flus, right? So I mean, there's many different strands.
There's many different kinds, and even like the flu panel. I just was talking about this today. The flu panel that decides what flu shot we're going to get every year, they base it on what's present around the world.
Right.
And this year I've just read stories that suggested that the flu vaccination may not be as effective because in doing their evaluations, some of the flus have mutated quicker than expected. So
I just got the flu shot the other day, and that was just we always get it every year, and because you've ever had the flu, you know how horrible it is. Once you've had the flu, you'll get a flu shot the rest of your life. But you're just taking a shot. You're hoping to grab the flu, which is, they all have their own names. Like I said, the Weather Channel should name them.
I won't get the flu shot. I won't get the flu shot because the one time I did get the flu shot, it gave me the flu.
Well, that's how these things work.
Well, you must have been sick already.
The
flu shot apparently enhances the...
If the virus in a flu shot is a dead virus, so you can't actually get it from the flu shot.
But you can
I reincarnated it, apparently. I don't know.
You already had it, and it just came on strong. But it seems like every year we're talking about some kind of disease or bacterial infection or
Really
something going around, like H1N1. I'm sure you guys remember that one 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The HockeyBuzzCast brought to you by WebMD.
Right. So what else is predictable? So the mumps is very predictable, as is the job description for the coaches of the Edmonton Oilers.
Oh my goodness! Nice segue.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Act.
Thank you.
Subtle.
I'm paid professional. So Ryan, unlike the Oilers have been able to blame their woes on many things. Infectious diseases have not been one of them. But they have a few weeks ago we had a press conference which we all talked about, which seemed to be a press conference that was designed to tell the rest of the league that we're not just going to trade you Taylor Hall for your 4th round draft pick in the 2014 draft, right? So they were trying to basically tell people to stop trying to fleece us. But in that press conference, McTavish said at times, that he was very happy with the coaching, or not happy. Maybe is not the right word, but he didn't anticipate making a move. He's not a very good anticipator. But like I've said many times with general managers speak in present tense only, and whatever they say is what they mean. He's not lying if he tells you that at that instant, but that doesn't hold true a couple hours or days later. It can feel differently. So that's the way general managers get around what we would look at as stretching the truth a little bit. So what changed between that press conference, Ryan, and now, in your mind?
I think, and something that's come to light here in the last week, is that Bob Nicholson, he was hired by the Oilers during the offseason, and it was primarily in more of a business-related role, overseeing some of the organization and the operations relating to the new arena, which is going up in downtown Edmonton. Now, in the last week, it's come to light that he's become more involved in the hockey operations side. And the report is that joining the organization as an outsider, he has been advocating for Dallas Eakins to be fired, and he had felt that was the direction Craig McTavish needed to take for a number of weeks. And Craig McTavish had relented, as most general managers do, who come in, bring in their own coach, tie themselves to a particular coach and feel he's the guy that's going to lead them towards better days. Craig McTavish was reluctant to fire Eakins, but at some point he just could not justify it anymore. He could not justify. When a team has lost 15 of 16 games, I don't care if it's Al Arbor behind the bench. That guy's going. Like it's something has to happen, right? And so this was inevitable. I think the team hadn't shown any signs of improvement. People like to pin it on the goaltending, but they were not scoring. The power play was a mess. They're giving up shorthanded goals. The defense was really in shambles, and so this was the obvious move. I think it was a long time coming, and judging by the reaction in Edmonton, I think people felt that it was long overdue, which is kind of sad to say when you're talking about a guy who was there for just over 100 games.
I was introduced to Bob Nicholson by Kevin Allen back in Montreal at an All-Star at our All-Star dinner that we one of our famous All-Star dinners that we had. Kevin, what are your thoughts on Bob Nicholson? And then to you, Josh.
Well, Bob's a good hockey guy. He ran Hockey Canada for so many years, and we all know how effective they have been. His management style was to delegate. He brought in a lot of good people to get the job done. They won Olympic gold medals. He knows the game. He should be involved as team president in the decisions. And I think Ryan's analysis was right on the money on this. I don't think that it's Dallas Eakins' fault that the Oilers are a mess, but you can't defend the fact that they showed no progress. We've all seen they were expected to be better defensively, and they haven't been, and there's certainly signs of disorganization within the team. And we all talk about how the Buffalo Sabres talent supply isn't very strong, but look at them now. They've got a coach that gets the most out of their players and it's had an impact. And I would expect that there'll be, historically, whenever you bring in a new coach, and I think that's because of the factors such as guys are playing for playing time and so forth. Everybody's on their best behavior, as I like to say.
Especially when it's your GM, that's
right. Yeah, exactly. So everybody will play better. and they should be better defensively because that's the easiest thing to fix. You know, you can slow the game down, you can muck it up a little bit, and you should be better defensively. So I think it was the right decision, but I don't think this fixes the problem by any stretch. And I think the biggest problem they have is they don't know what the problem is. I think, and I defy anybody to pinpoint exactly why the Oilers, have been terrible for so long. Because it appears to be some measure of chemistry problem, but usually you can identify it as we all say just sort of a generalized, and this is what I believe is that they don't. The young players who are talented players, they're like I'm a big, as we all know, I'm a big believer in Taylor Hall. Like I think if Taylor Hall were on another team, he'd be a star.
Absolutely.
But I think his problem is he doesn't have anybody there. He didn't learn from a Datsuk or a Zetterberg or like Tatar and Nyquist are now in Detroit. He doesn't have that guy that he's learning how to be a winner, and because of that, the team's a mess. But I don't know how you can fix it, not immediately, and I don't think anybody does.
Well, I mean, Dallas Eakins to me was a sacrificial lamb. The people and the fans in Edmonton, wanted somebody to be responsible for this debacle that's been going on the last few years, and he was the most obvious and easiest target to be sacrificed. The thing is, I don't think that appetite is satisfied now with just Eakins. I think it now moves to McTavish, and Eakins in his post firing press conference, thanked everybody, including McTavish, for the support that he gave. Now that could be just Eakins is not wanting to rip people going out the door and wants to work in the NHL again.
Let's realize that Dallas Eakins was given this job in a really weird way.
Right.
He interviewed as an assistant coach. He blew McTavish away, and you actually covered Dallas Eakins in the AHL, Mike. Like directly, you've dealt with him.
Yeah.
Him probably better than him way better than I do. But the one thing about Dallas Eakins that kind of baffles me, Ryan, is, on one hand he appears to be a player's coach, and on the other hand we hear that he's not a player's coach. That he's actually he's really like a driver, like sort of making, I don't know what the opposite of player's coach is. I guess a
taskmaster.
Yeah. But he comes off as to the media as like he's like the nicest guy in the world. So like when I think of taskmaster, like I think of Brian Boucher. I'm not Brian Boucher. I'm sorry, Guy Boucher. Brian Boucher is a goalie. But I think of Guy Boucher. Guy Boucher was frightening. Like out to interview, and he looks frightening. He's got frightening eyes. He just scares the hell out of you. Guy Boucher is a tough character. He's a taskmaster. But what really? First, let's start with you, Mike. What really is Dallas? What is your opinion on Dallas Eakins?
I actually think Dallas Eakins is he's a very structured coach. What I saw with him in the AHL, and granted it's not the NHL, but his teams were always solid defensively, had an idea of what they were going to do. They had good goaltending. I think he is more a victim of the sins of people above him, with the organization not drafting well, the organization not drafting the right players, the organization not getting a support structure for those young players, and it was just a conflagration of mistakes that led to his demise. But as I was saying earlier, now the fire is going to go on McTavish. Even more. I think it's going to go on Kevin Lowe, and if you believe Darren Drager and what he reported yesterday, they're supposedly open to shopping Taylor Hall, and that his report was Taylor Hall, quote, is uncoachable, unquote, which I found completely opposed to everything that I have heard about Taylor Hall as a player.
Yeah, that was a weird one. Ryan, your thoughts, and then Kevin, your thoughts on that one.
It's difficult, right? Because we put labels like that on young players when they don't show a commitment to two-way play, and I think Hall's play has regressed this season to a point defensively, and so people are quick to label, right? They're quick to say, well, that's not the way you're supposed to play, so clearly he was tuning out the coach, or he just wasn't getting it, or he's got a 10-cent head. Things like that, which are completely unfair to the player and completely ignore his previous track record. So all that talk. And it was interesting in Dallas Eakins' comments today because people wanted to see how he would address the Taylor Hall question. And he said, the kid's great. I feel he's come a long way in the last year. Like, everyone on that Oilers roster has made mistakes, and I don't think it's fair to start throwing labels around on players that are going to stick and really damage their reputations.
Let me interrupt for a second, because I think when I've watched Edmonton a lot, because they're a fun team to watch, win or lose, they're entertaining. My opinion of Taylor Hall's mistakes are the fact that he does think he's the best player on the team and does feel personally responsible for everything that's happening. And I get the sense that he's trying to do too much out there, and he's making mistakes, where he's, and if he's not defensive, right now, sure, he's not going to be great defensively. That team can't score goals, and he's thinking to himself, I'm not. It's not my job to be the defensive mark.
No, exactly. You're exactly right. I mean, there are so many times this season where he's looking to take the breakout pass that's not there, getting caught on a lane change, trying to dangle through 3 defensemen, trying to do it all himself. And
he's a forward that needs a passing. He's like a wide receiver without a quarterback. He's like a really good wide receiver without a quarterback, and he's out there, and there's no one getting him the ball. That's what it feels like. You see many times where he's breaking up the wing, and no one's getting him the ball. No one. They don't have anybody to pass him the ball, and he's getting open. He's out there. Kevin, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I've known Taylor since he was playing for the Windsor Spitfires, and I interviewed him when he was a young prospect. He was a very impressive guy. Great passion for the game. You never know what goes on behind closed doors or in a coach-player relationship, but I'd be stunned if I found out that he was the type of player that didn't listen to a coach. I mean, he wants to win. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. And I use this all the time, but it's so often forgotten. Just think of him with some of the great centers in the league. Think if he played with Jonathan Tate or Tavares. We wouldn't even be talking like this. He'd be one of the top, scorers in the league, and he's a speedy guy with a great instinct, scorer's instinct. And if the right people would have been in Edmonton at the time, and the other problem is like, even if you do think that the Oilers need to find some experienced winning guys, they're coming in as role players, and they need some guys at the top that are winners. Guys that are Taylor Hall's peer. Bringing in a 4th line guy who's one, that isn't what they need. They need a flag carrier. They need someone who's a top player.
And the only
Josh. Sorry, Josh.
Yeah, I just want to point out that practice is going on right now, and Mac T is running the practice.
Yeah.
5 other coaches, including Nelson, on the ice, so that's 6 Edmonton Oilers coaches right now on the ice. A 7th one is poring over the video, so they're basically got.
Sounds like a great idea. Sounds like too many cooks. We can throw many cliches out there, but
to extend on what Kevin was saying, the only problem with getting those comparably aged players to Taylor Hall and being able to bring them in is that you have to trade those young players to get those players. And right now the value of Eberle is down. He makes $6 million. The value of Yakupov is down. He's a former #1 pick. You've got an 18-year-old Draisaitl who probably shouldn't even be there. Justin Schultz.
Mike, you're right. And here's the thing: there's only so much puck to go around, and this has been my problem with Edmonton from the beginning. They don't need all these guys. They just don't. They can't get these guys as much ice time and as much, only one guy can carry the puck up the ice. There's only so much, so they have a lot of parts that are still valuable because, like I don't think this hurts Dallas Eakins in the future. I think he'll get another job because just like the other players, like we were talking about Yakupov, who was going to get a job because we didn't know what Edmonton was. I don't think we know what Edmonton was with Dallas Eakins. I think it's the same thing. To me,
but does he get a head coaching job or an assistant coaching job?
I think he could get a head coaching job still. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think this is it feels so dysfunctional at such a deeper level. I think everyone's given Dallas a mulligan on this.
Well, it's difficult to say. It's difficult to say because nobody looked at that roster at any point and said this is a 30th place team and Dallas Eakins has no chance, right? And people are saying that now. Like, what was he supposed to do? Well, he was supposed to dig his way out of 30th place and the worst record in franchise history. Maybe that's just a thought. Like, you need to get more out of your team than that. There are coaches who have got a lot more out of a lot worse teams than the Edmonton Oilers are today. And so that's where it falls on Dallas Eakins. And yeah, he's a charismatic guy. I'm sure he'll get another shot somewhere. The question I have for going forward for the Oilers is, they bring in Craig McTavish, transitioning the job to their American Hockey League coach, Todd Nelson.
And before you go any further, Ryan, I want to mention that I talked to a source yesterday who doesn't agree in the way this is all being reported, okay, in Edmonton, who says that, yeah, they're all saying that McTavish is going to be the guy and that Todd Nelson's going to take over the job. I was told that McTavish is going in and he's going to analyze this situation. And there is, even though the one scenario is that Todd Nelson takes over this job, that's not the only scenario.
Yeah.
And that there are, and McTavish isn't saying that, so other people are saying that. So that makes me wonder who's really in control of this. There's definitely a mixed feeling. Not everyone's thrilled about this concept of Todd Nelson taking over.
No, absolutely not. And I don't think the Oilers are either, because really, what are you going to learn this season, Eck? Really, when you look at it, the Oilers.
Right. And if ever there was a calling for, like we talked about before, like a Ken Hitchcock type coach, a senior guy who's been through, like, bring back Keenan. We need, Jacques Demers for crying. And we need somebody who is out there. If ever there was a team,
because Tortorella.
Yeah.
And it's not like this is a new message, because Todd Nelson coached all these guys during the lockout when they were down in Oklahoma City. So it's not like they're going to be hearing some new voice that's going to draw out something more from it.
Let me make a couple of points.
Yeah.
One about Dallas Eakins, and I'm going to make my point about Eakins telling a story about Mike Babcock and Bill Peters. Peters, of course, is the Carolina Hurricanes coach who was Babcock's assistant. And he tells the story that when he was a junior coach, he called and tried to get in touch with Babcock to get some advice on how to advance as a coach and how to move up. And Babcock said to him, "Is your team the hardest working team in the league?" And Peter said, "Well, not really. We're probably in the top 5, but there's some teams that outwork us. I can't." And Babcock cut him off and said, "Don't call me back until your team is the hardest working team in the league." Now, I say that story because that's where I think Eakins will have trouble getting the job now, because even though everybody knows that Oilers was a mess, he didn't do anything to make that mess better. And if you're a good coach, you find some way to make it better. And he wasn't able to do that. And the other point I would make about, I'm not sure that it really matters what McTavish's role is or how he sees it, because now that Eakins is gone, he's the guy next in line to be in trouble.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to try to sort it out, but what he feels about it and what he's thinking about it may not matter by next summer.
And that's very much along the lines of what I'm hearing. That's why when everyone kept saying Todd Nelson's taking over this job, I wouldn't put your house on that one. I just wouldn't.
Absolutely. And it's funny. It kind of reminds me of the situation. You ever seen that Chef Gordon Ramsay when he goes into those restaurants and he's like, "Here, taste your food. Taste how horrible this is. Taste people, right?" Now McTavish is going to be able to consume his own food and say, "Oh my goodness, this is absolutely horrible."
Well, one thing here though, and okay, say McTavish is on death's door in terms of being a GM in Edmonton right now. If you remember, and Scott Howson was like this in this sort of situation when he was in Columbus. Columbus allowed him to make the Rick Nash deal.
Right.
They allowed him to make significant
exactly.
to that roster when he was basically on his way out. Is Bob Nicholson, is Daryl Cates and Kevin Lowe going to allow Craig McTavish to make these big changes that he promised when he first came in there, when he's basically on his way out the door? Are they going to do it or not?
Right. And there is a definite disconnect in this town, because Bob Nicholson is the first hiring that made sense for me in a long time. In terms of they brought in a guy who has tons of experience and had nothing to do with the Edmonton Oilers. Yeah. And I think that was important. And all the other guys we're talking about, Kevin Lowe, these guys, they're all connected to what is now they're all connected to this ship. And the heyday, they were all part of it. The Edmonton fans will forever worship them. But it's the idea here is that Nicholson is the way they need to go, and Nicholson is that, in my opinion, along with other people, that aren't part of this at all is the way they need to go, because I don't think, even though the Oilers were giving, they were giving them all these assurances that Aikens had a job, I never got the impression that the players felt like Dallas Aikens was going to be there longer than they were ever. That was never a thought, right? I mean,
No.
Kevin, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I just think that the whole Oilers mess is so hard to figure out, and I agree with you completely that Nicholson was a good hire.
Yeah.
And ultimately, as much as the fans don't want to hear this, it's going to be basically a do-over. You're going to have to decide who the handful of players that you want to keep around moving forward. And I think there are, that's a lot tougher than people realize, because now it's become such a mess that I think some of the players have been tainted, and you may just have to move them out because they're deserving of a do-over as well. So, but I still don't think the core group. Like, I disagree that Jordan Eberle's stock is down. I think there are 29 teams in this league that would love to have Jordan Eberle, but believing that if he gets in the proper environment, that the Eberle that we've seen being a very effective player will be there much more consistently. So, if I was the Oilers, I'd be identifying my core group, and I think we all kind of know who those players are, and just sort of building around them as we move forward. And the biggest problem, I think, is who's the guy that's ultimately going to come in and make all those decisions.
Yeah. Right. Who's it going to be? I mean, they shouldn't be letting McTavish do this. If not McTavish, and then the question is Lowe really do it? And you never really know who is doing this in Edmonton. Is it Lowe? Is it
Everyone
McTavish?
always says the right thing. Craig McTavish said yesterday, he said, I make all the decisions. I have complete autonomy with this team. And it's like he's so forthcoming in saying that, it's not true, because clearly Daryl Caton's in his ear, Kevin Lowe's in his ear. Like, when a guy says, I'm telling you the truth, okay, I'm telling you the truth, that means he's clearly lying. So
yeah, he said, I have blood on my hands. That's what he said. And I'm like, you don't admit. I mean, I don't know. That press conference was as strange as the one 10 days ago, and the Dallas Aikens press conference was over a half an hour and was pretty surreal. So
I definitely, to finish this topic up and move on to news, Josh, because we're almost out of time. This is an unbelievably fast hour. And all we've talked about are the mumps and the Oilers. So have a good lunch. I definitely recommend reading the Eric Duhatschek article on this. The Edmonton Oilers begin rebuild 2.0. It's really good. And in the article, the most telling line, and we're doing the Cranky Hockey Writers show tomorrow, so I'm going to bring up this to him. He says, the likelihood is we wouldn't even be discussing the Oilers in context of the McDavid sweepstakes if McTavish had left well enough alone and just kept Ralph Kruger on as his head coach. That's Duhatschek's opinion, which I agree with. I do. And to think that the team was heading in the right direction, maybe not as fast as they wanted them to, but so what do you got, Josh? What's going on in the rest of the world of hockey? I got a couple things.
A couple of injury updates. Not sure you guys knew this or not, but Paul Bernice today at practice saying that Jake Trouba has been sidelined until February with an upper body injury. The injuries just keep happening for the Winnipeg Jets on the blue line already, without Bogosian and without I don't know if Enstrom came back or not, but they've been hurting big time on the blue line. So that's a big blow to the Jets. And
this plays the trade market too, because remember Bufflin's been around, and I mean they can't do much right now with Trouba, who's definitely their star.
Other injury news. This is actually good news out of Tampa. A lot of people were holding their breath when Ben Bishop went down last night. Head coach Cooper saying that it's just day to day. John Cooper saying it's day to day, and he could return this weekend. So that's definitely some good news. Some more sad news. This is not injury related, but this is in the KHL. Apparently 3 KHL teams may fold now due to monetary issues related to the crashing ruble and the Russian economy. Some coaches still haven't even been paid anything this year. So that's not good news in the KHL right now.
It's ironic that the declining Canadian dollar and the declining ruble are attached to the declining oil prices, right now, and those are both affecting hockey in the sense that oil billionaires own a lot of the KHL franchises, and the amount of the Canadian dollar lowers the amount of the Rogers TV contract to the NHL. So I think Gary Bettman is hoping that there's going to be an oil crisis and that the oil prices go up.
I've long said that Hockey Buzz writers and podcasters make more than KHL head coaches. But continue, Josh. Continue.
Well, it seems like anything that has to do with oil is bad luck right now. Oh, Oilers. Never mind.
Yes.
Last thing I want to bring up, again, the NHL has released the All-Star voting, and now Zemgus Girgensons now leads the NHL voting with 1,089,865 votes. That's over 500,000 more than Patrick Kane, who has 586,000 votes.
No one's more deserving of this. Yeah, no one's more deserving of this. We see this all the time, right? This is the Rory Fitzpatrick, right, of this year.
Well, he's paid his dues. This is the Latvian delegation that's pushing this.
Right.
He's a Latvian player. I'm actually doing a story on him today, as a matter of fact. So.
Do you have a problem with this at all, Kevin?
Pardon me?
Do you have a problem with this at all? With
no, not at all. I mean, this is what, people complain about it, but this is what you really kind of wanted to happen when you added fan voting. I mean, this is predictable that, we're going to have groups, and, you want to engage fans. And what you've done is the Latvians have gotten organized, and, your hope is that some other cities are going to say, well, we can't let the Latvians do that. We're going to get engaged and get our guy in. That's how this system works. Like, this is for marketing reasons. They're not trying to get the best players in,
Yeah, this is proof that the lunatics can't run the asylum, and this is one of my problems with the All-Star game. I mean, Girgensons probably should be the representative for the Sabres in the All-Star game, but there is no way he deserves to be the most voted player. And it just makes an All-Star game, which I personally think is a joke, even more of a joke.
I think the NHL is doing this, guys. This might be an inflammatory thing.
We have an actual conspiracy theory coming up now.
Listen to this, though, because this one actually makes sense.
All right.
The only time we ever talk about all-star balloting is the Rory Fitzpatrick year, right? Like, that put all-star balloting on the map. So I think I would not surprise me if the NHL is concocting this to get people interested, to get eyeballs on this issue, to get people thinking about the All-Star game in December. Because if they come out and say, oh, Sidney Crosby has 1 million votes and he leads everyone, big deal, right? No one talks about it. We're not discussing it right now. So the NHL has nothing to lose by taking a young guy in a weird market that can latch onto this and boosting him. So, come on.
Well,
I'm not so sure, but
keep in mind, reacting to what Mike said, that no time has the guys who appeared in the All-Star game ever been considered All-Stars. The All-Star designation is reserved for the players who were voted at the end of the year by the media. The All-Star game is an exhibition. Like, nobody other than Mike apparently cares who plays in the All-Star game. Like, I couldn't even tell you. Like, I've covered league 30 years. If you said to me, who's made the most appearances in an All-Star game, I would have no idea.
All I know is I think there's going to be some competition from Estonia. Leo Komarov is from Estonia, so I think the rival Baltic state is going to start pumping in the votes for Leo Komarov just to get something in, so we can get something going here.
Well, I'm going to end today on something different. The relative beer cost per ounce at all 30 NHL arenas. Okay, because I thought that since we got the mumps, it's cold out. It's been that kind of week. I think we should look at the beer cost per ounce at NHL arenas today. This is interesting because the cheapest place to drink a beer is Columbus.
Followed. Why I got so hammered last year. No.
Yeah, there you go. Followed closely by Ottawa, which is impressive, because in Ottawa, and then Washington, Colorado, and Philly. But at the top of the list, of course, Montreal, which is not surprising because that's La Beer up there, and then the second highest is Winnipeg. So Winnipeg, which I guess you have to drink to just to keep your blood from freezing in your body. But yep, that's my little story there. And basically it was an interesting list because it doesn't necessarily go like I would have thought Philly was going to be pretty high on this because
I was surprised that Toronto wasn't the highest based on.
Me too.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to a league game tonight, and I went there a couple weeks ago, and I think the beer, I saw someone get a beer for $18.
So
that's ridiculous.
76 cents an ounce in Montreal for a beer. Think about that for a second.
Well, and Eck, I would be very curious to see a chart like this with wine consumption at games, because I guarantee you the Maple Leafs crowd with their pistachios and their wine in the lower bowl, they laugh the field.
Wait. Do we have a sushi chart here?
Right. As the famous Simpsons line, those schmucks who have to watch hockey without eating sushi.
We'll be sitting in the Platinums tonight.
Yeah, there's lots of games tonight. It'll be good stuff. One of the things I do want to start doing is this at the end of every show. I want to have the Buzz game of the night, and tonight's Buzz game of the night is Toronto and Anaheim. It has to be because the Leafs are hot and the Ducks are the Ducks.
You have the two hottest teams in the league right now. Anaheim has won 7 in a row. The Leafs are 9-1-1 in the last 11.
So, Mike, before we go, I'd like you to tell us everything that's bad about this game, all that could go wrong with it, and then we'll go from there.
How's this first stat? Can I mention something really quickly?
Yes.
Go ahead.
On this day in 1977, Bruce Boudreau scored his first and only hat trick.
Wow.
In Maple Leaf uniform.
Wow.
And Boudreau's playing the Leafs tonight.
Yeah,
That was effing great.
It's strange because there are so many ex-Anaheim players on the Maple Leafs, and even Randy Carlisle said it today before the game that if a player is saying that they don't get worked up to play against their former team, they're lying. And he won a Stanley Cup with the Ducks in 2007, and you have 3 former Ducks first-round picks on the roster. So I think it's going to be a very interesting game. I really don't have anything negative to say right now about either team because they're going so well, but I'll find out something tomorrow.
I'm sure we'll have something negative to say about tomorrow. But it's the B train that runs from Anaheim to Toronto to Calgary. So that's why all these players are in the same are the same. And eventually Phaneuf will be back in Calgary. That's the rumor, right? So anyway, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank everybody. Kevin, what do you have? So you're working on the mump story. When are we going to see the mump story in USA?
Well, this would be my 4th or 5th mump story. That'll be I got a Gergetsen story come out. Just who is this cat that all the Latvians are
oh yeah, cool.
excited about. And also I'm writing a little bit about David. David Poyle tonight, who's in the 2nd place all time, passes Harry Sinden if they win against Boston for the most wins for a GM. And who's in 1st place? Does everyone know the answer to that?
Scotty Bowman? Oh, no.
Glenn Sather.
Glenn Sather.
Yeah, he's number 1.
Wow.
So
Incredible coach.
The funny thing with Glenn Sather is Glenn Sather still has his hand on the Edmonton Oilers because it was the Oilers who lost to the Rangers, and then Eakins got fired. So Sather's still making the decisions in Edmonton.
Yeah. Well, I won't touch this one. I'm not a huge Sather fan as a GM, but it's amazing to me that he has done as well as he's. Obviously he had a great history there. In New York, he's made some interesting moves, and you can't argue with where the Rangers are right now. And that Rick Nash is probably a Hart Trophy candidate. So my gosh, upside down right now. We'll talk to you guys soon. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Be back tomorrow.